Welcome to the Operation Move podcast. My name is Zoe, and this week I have a conversation with Ness, which we recorded on the 9th of November last year. So you'll hear us talking about stuff before the school holidays actually started, and sort of like at the time, the event that she'd started to train for was a little bit further away than what it would be now. But the main things that we were touching on is how you go from not doing a whole lot of running or training to getting back into training for a big event like a 50k, which is what she is doing, and also how that fits in with sort of like managing the rest of your life. So yeah, I hope you enjoy today's episode.
So I saw on the Facebook machine that you've been on to, what is it, Simpson
Desert Ultra. So yeah, I sort of slipped on that.
Distance did you pull the trigger on?
I'm gonna say only the 50 because I was to do the 100, and then my lovely friend and neighbour, who is also a PT, she's put together a bit of a plan for me, and I met up with her on Thursday, I think it was, or Friday, and I said, oh, so, I think I might just do the 50. She said, well, that's really good because that was sort of going to be my suggestion today. And I went, oh, okay. That's good. She goes, I was going to say, if you want to do the 100, that's fine, but, you're pushing it. I said, I need people like you in my life that will enable me to do things to a certain point, but then actually say, no, like, hang on. Yeah, so heading up there in June, which it's, I have clients at Birdsville. So, it's going up there to see my clients, and we'll just do a little run as well.
Little teensy little run as well.
Yeah. But it's so cool. Like, it's such a unique sort of event. Jenna sets it up so that everyone is sort of finishing about roughly the same time. Like, you have a time frame for each of the events, like a starting range. You can start from, I think it's 10 o'clock till 2 o'clock at night. And you self-seed yourself so that basically everyone is finishing around the same time on the Sunday. So that's going to be pretty interesting to sort of, self-seed. How do you self-seed yourself so that you're not over-ambitious, but you don't want to give yourself heaps of time because it's in a cloverleaf shape of 4 loops. So you don't want to do your 1 loop and then have to sit down and wait because they don't let you go on the next loop if you're going to be going really early. Like, it's a little bit hard to understand, but when you read on the website, and I've followed it for a few years now, and how the aim is to have everyone finishing within a certain time window so that everyone's sort of there at the finish line.
As opposed to it just being sort of like a real sort of like trickle in, and less atmosphere and so like those the people who are just hiking, like I think there's a 25k, there's 2 25k events. You can do a dusk and dawn 25k loop, and the dawn one would be all the people that are on that last loop would be out there together. So it's pretty it should be pretty fun. As things go, it should be fun. And then when I saw like the dusk and the dawn 25Ks, I'm like, oh God, maybe I should just do that instead. Like, do 1 25K, have a snooze, get up in the morning, head out and do another. So, it could change. It could change. It could. So what's sort of like the plan looking like with your PT that you're sort of like working on? Like, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about, because like a lot of times people would look at something like that and go like, where do you even start? Yeah, so she's a running coach as well as a PT, and she's done me a plan. Just basically, the running side of things is all time based.
Yeah.
So and I like that, because if the long run, I said to her, if it's a day when you're feeling not 100%, you don't want to be out there. If you walk for 2 hours, well, you walk for 2 hours. Like, it doesn't matter. And the strength side of it, it will change as we go, but it's just lots of single leg stuff. It's just, I think it doesn't matter what you're doing, does it? It's like, it's that single leg stuff.
Yeah.
And getting that strength back. I haven't looked too far ahead on my plan. I'm just purposefully not doing that, but yeah, but she'll change it as we go, and yeah, I know, but it is hard. Like, it is, yeah, because there'll be a bit of sand to go on. There'll be rocks. Yeah.
I had like a memory like pop up in my sort of in my timeline from doing pan packs, where there was I think it was actually the first run I did was the beach mile. And I think it was actually on Josh's phone, and he showed me, and he's like, that looked hard. And I said, I can pretty much safely say that like was the hardest thing I've ever done. Like, because it was soft sand. Like, you're not like on like hard sand. It's purposefully done on soft sand. And, like a mile is like a really long time in that sort of condition, and it was just tough.
That would be horrible, like, because you'd be trying to go as fast as you can, but you know that you can't go very fast. And
it's like quite strategic too, like with sort of like getting your like feet placement where people's feet have already gone. So like that sand's like slightly compacted. But it was also, I think now that they've changed the time of it, because when we did it, it was like 10 or 11 in the morning, and it was just hot. And I think that they've since sort of changed it to be more like a 6 a.m. thing, which would have been far more
slightly more enjoyable. Not far more.
No, that's true. Not far more enjoyable. So yeah, God. So yeah, like, and it's just the kind of thing that you just like, unless you specifically train on sand, it doesn't matter like how fit you are, it's gonna suck.
It would gash you, like, and that's like, I guess around here, when I look at even our roads that you drive on at the moment, like, they're pretty rough and ready. So terrain wise, I'm going to get a bit of practice. And our farm roads are pretty rocky and yuck at the moment. But the sand, I'm thinking maybe I could just go to the beach for a week, and just by myself, no kids, just by myself, and I'll run on the sand. Yes, that would happen, wouldn't it?
Do you have like a crossover point? Like, so now this is, I guess, where are we? November. God, it just seems like it should be November. But anyway, we are. So I guess it's sort of like in the vicinity of 6 or 7 months away.
Yeah, about 30 weeks, my friend Sally quietly informed me. And I'm like, oh, when she puts it in weeks, it's like, oh, yeah, okay. I can see why the 100 was off the cards pretty quickly.
So do you start feeling like you need to, like, are you still, with sort of 6 months to go, you're like, there's heaps of time, even if everything doesn't sort of like happen? Or do you start to feel kind of like a little bit of that sort of like that good pressure, like, in order to sort of like get there, I need to be sort of ticking over?
Week, I was sitting in there's heaps of time. Like, it doesn't matter. But yeah, then when I met with Sal and it's like 30 weeks. And when you sort of see it, the whole thing sort of mapped out, that's when you sort of, like, my brain goes, oh, okay, it all fits on one page. Like, it's one page Excel sheet. It's not 2 or 3 pages. So you sort of then go, okay, yeah, so put these things in. And, you know, the time just disappears so quickly.
Yeah.
You go a week where you don't do much and you think, oh, it's all right. But then, you know, like, next week's the middle of November.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah. So, no, I'm in the camp now of that. I just need to switch my mind over to, I just need to tick these things off.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have to be fancy. I don't have to, you know, I'm a full noise or no sort of person, but I just need to tick them off. Yeah, just keep ticking them off, because, you know, the wheels will fall off the cart at some point, and, you know, I'll get sick or the kids will get sick, and yeah, I just need to do the work now.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does this week look like?
So I have got 2 45-minute runs and then a 2-hour run walk.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did one on Monday, and it's all just at, like, super easy pace, which is really lovely. Concentrating on keeping my heart rate down. I finally found my heart rate strap again, which, you know, 2 years of hiding. And I'll head out today, obviously, because it's daycare day, so I can actually do that. And then Friday morning, I'll probably get up early, because I'm heading away for the weekend. Yeah, so just the 3 things, and then 2 strength sessions. Yeah, which I didn't get one done yesterday because, yeah, yesterday was just a bit of a write-off, really. You know, work got in the way, and Wyatt didn't have his afternoon sleep, and
Yeah.
that's fun. Like, yeah. Anyway, I had planned to take him out in.
Will just happen, you know, like, I haven't, where are we? It's Wednesday, and I haven't run this week because, like, on Monday we were, like, packing up from Brisbane and coming back and, you know, trying to get, like, a little bit of work in.
Yeah.
And then Tuesday was just, like, a massive amount of work because there was, like, a pay run, and also I needed to get all of these manual journals done before the, you know, like, the meeting with the accountant. And it's just like, this is what it is. And it was also Josh's birthday, so I was like, you know, like, this is happening, and I was just like, just have, like, a couple of days, enjoy the sleep-ins, and, you know, like, it'll be fine. And but it is really easy now, particularly when the weeks are so full, for that sort of, like, 2 days of me going, well, you know, there's just, like, so much on, that could easily become a week.
Yep.
Like, because then you sort of, like, out of the routine, and you're like, oh, you know, like, that's stuff to do. And you just got, like, I got a 4-page document about the drama schedule, like, we're heading into with this, like, showcase at the end of the year, and there's, like, 2 performance dates, there's 2 rehearsal dates, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, these people, like, there's all of these different, like, classes in drama, right? And I'm like, it would be so much easier if the drama teacher created a specific thing that was just like, this is the time for this specific class. Instead, they've created a generalized document, and I'm, like, trying to deconstruct it like the Da Vinci Code, like, and I'm saying, Riley, so you're doing this at this time on these 2 dates, and that's it. And she's like, yeah, I think so. And I'm like, okay. And I've already had to sort of, like, do this full sort of Tetris thing of like, okay, like that's when her drama showcase is. Our work Christmas party is on this thing. This time I'm going to be like away, and you can just see how this time of year can just like really get away from you because there's just so much going on, and you know, always wanting the sort of certain things with like work projects to be sort of finalized before everyone goes. And yeah, just like and I keep forgetting it's like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be listening to uni lectures too.
But it's like, and I see what you say about if it doesn't, you know, you have those couple of days and that turns into like a week, and that's like today I'm like, you know, it's, you only have to do 45 minutes plus add 10 minutes walk at the start, so an hour. You can be out of the office for an hour. And there's a part of me at the moment, you know, it's 2 and a bit weeks until Bazzers are due, and I'm like, oh, you don't have time, like you should be at your computer. I'm like, no, like I have time. Surely I can take an hour. Like I've been at my computer since 5 o'clock this morning. I do 2 hours of a morning before anyone else wakes up. I'm like, you can take an hour. Yeah. And then as well as like all the work and the end of year stuff, it'll soon be 40 degrees here. Like at the moment, I'm still in a jacket, but I know that, you know, in a couple of weeks, it could be 40 degrees, and running at 11 o'clock in the morning won't ever happen. Like, yeah.
And it is that sort of that mindset too. Like I've gotten into that in the past when it was sort of like really, when I was really busy with uni or work or whatever, where I've been like, oh, like I just need to like just dedicate this time to getting this done. But when I've done the opposite and sort of gone, no, I'll just like go for like a 45-minute run now, or I'll go into the garage and do my strength session, I don't really experience it myself as getting less done. Like having those sort of breaks, it just kind of like makes you more productive, and you know, like you have more mental focus. So it can get into that sort of stress thing of like, oh, just like spend all of this time, do this thing. And but it, yeah, like it still works out when you do the other thing. It's just sort of making that mental shift.
And I think, you know, I could sit here all day and there would be a good portion of it where I'd faff around and I'd be doing little menial jobs which aren't part of my big, deep work that I need to do today. I'm like, well, why not head outside for an hour, get some sunshine and some fresh air and come back, and then I'll be in a better frame of mind to tackle some of the ever-growing big list of jobs. But you're right, it doesn't. And like, if Wyatt was here today, I would have, like, he generally has a 2-hour sleep of a morning. So from 9 till 11, I would have 2 hours of work, and then he's awake for nearly 3 hours. So that's 3 hours where I don't work. So to me, yeah, I just need, I'm telling myself now I need to get outside. Once this is over, I'm going outside.
Yeah. And I think it is just one of those things where the work always expands to fill the space. So if you say like I've got like 8 hours, then it's going to take eight hours, you know. And something that I certainly noticed, like when I wasn't doing like uni for a session, I was like, I'm going to have heaps of time, you know, not doing uni. But somehow I didn't. Things just sort of like expanded to fill the space. I didn't really notice. I mean, I suppose now there's with that sort of stuff, there's more, it's more like stuff that I have to, like when I'm not at uni, I can just kind of like relax in the evening and not really have any, whereas now it's probably more like those are things that have to happen like on the weekend or in the evening. And so that's sort of probably more where that time goes. But even during the day, it's just like, yeah, if you have more time, it's just like more stuff comes in.
Yep. And that's next year I want to get at least one more day of daycare. I'd love 2 more days. I'd love to have 3 days where Wyatt's at daycare. And it's really funny because I'm like, yeah, you know, that'd be great. I'll get everything done. And I'm like, no, you know what? I know what's going to happen. Like
They'd be like, oh, well, now I've got time. Like, I can take on more people. So here you go. So I'm going to have to stick on my notice board near my desk. Like, no. Like, that's it. It's okay to say no to people. And it's okay to have Monday and Friday where I don't do any work. Like, there's a whole reason I work for myself. And if I can't fit it in on Tuesday to Thursday for 75% of the year, then I need to have a little rethink. But I know full well I could just like expand. So I could be like, okay, 3 flat out days, and then I'll work the other 4 days as well. Like,
yeah. Yeah, it is. Like, I think that it is something that you just have to have, like, those really strong sort of like boundaries on those days when you're not working. Like, even we're sort of like talking about like our plan for what to do. Like, I don't work on Wednesdays usually, and we're sort of at work talking about our plan of like what to do when there's like sort of like a more of an urgent situation, you know, like on a Wednesday, which I purposefully picked that day because emergencies don't tend to happen on a Wednesday, because you've like sort of had like the 2 days before, or you've got the 2 days afterwards. But occasionally they would, and sort of like, I was like, oh, you know, like if an emergency came up, I could probably, you know, like do something on the Wednesday. And I was like, no. I work out the contingency plan, because like once you sort of like have that little teeny erosion, then it just is so much easier for everything else to come in. And then it's like, oh yeah, but like I can respond to people, you know, asking me questions on a Wednesday, or, you know, like whatever it is. But it's just sort of like important to have that day of like doing other things that there is just not space for. And often, like, you know, what will be different when the kids are on school holidays, but now they're at school, and it makes it a lot easier to sort of have that sort of like more concentrated stuff on other things, like whether it's sort of like, you know, editing a podcast, or even if it's something real, I've got to fill out some high school forms, which I have a strong aversion to doing because I haven't accepted it yet. You know, there's like all of that sort of stuff, which just gets, you know, like pushed aside if you don't.
Your life admin, like, and generally that's what I do on Wednesday when I'm in town. I say that I'm working, and I might go to the library for a couple of hours, but it's doing all the life admin crap, like the little bits and pieces that, because Dubbo is quite spread out with shops and things, and I'll generally need to go all over town. And I figure, well, it's easier for me to do that when I don't have Wyatt with me. So I go to do all the things, and then I get to the end of the day and it's 9 o'clock and I'm on my computer because I haven't done the work that I was meant to do. So you do life admin instead of all your other stuff.
Yeah.
And that takes a bit of doing. Life admin is shit. I hate it.
Yes. It's just all of the sort of, all of the forms, like all of the errands, all of the things that don't fit into, like, it's just sort of, I think, like the structure of most people's lives is like just not conducive to 2 people working.
Yeah.
It's conducive to one person working and one person, like, you know, cooking, cleaning, running errands. Like, that is really still how everything is set up. So even something like our coffee machine broken, having to like pack it up and send it back to, you know, the place so that they can replace it or repair it or do whatever it is that they do at the magic coffee place. Like, that thing sat there for a week before we could get it together just to get to the post office. And I'm like, yeah, that totally tracks. And so, yeah, it is like one of those things where if you don't sort of like create that space, then it just, the stuff that you haven't done just is kind of like taking up real estate in your brain, and it's almost like, do that thing.
Hence why I haven't posted the yarn to you, because it's sitting in the spare room and I can't see it at the moment. And I'm like, I need to go in there and attack it one day. But I'm like, it's not going to happen this week.
Yeah, I've started like creating a list of the things that I need to do, but I'm currently avoiding because I don't want to. So like would be like enrollment forms. Also, like out here, I need to, when Josh works from home, he works at the dining table, which has just gone on far longer than it ever should have. And probably like during when the kids are at school, it's probably not that much of a big deal. But in school holidays, it just means that he can't really sort of like concentrate or focus because the office is outside of the house.
Yep.
So they still come out here to demand food every 5 minutes, but it does like have like there's an extra sort of step involved, and you can kind of you have that sort of like that natural boundary between the house and the office, and it's small, but if I got rid of all of the excess furniture, I could get 2 big desks in here and it would be fine. But over the summer I would also need to get like an aircon unit or something because it is awful. when it's 30 degrees or over, it's just like absolutely hideous. So would need to do that. So but it's one of those things where like it ends up going, okay, like this is something that needs to sort of like happen like before like school holidays, and then sort of like make little inroads into it. Like ages ago when the kids were little, I remember following like a cleaning routine, like the fly lady thing, where it was just like taking like 15 minutes to like work on one trouble spot or like whatever it is. And it's still something that I use now when I'm like, I'd like to work on something, but I don't want to devote my whole day and get like sucked into the abyss with it. So it's just like do something for 15 minutes and then like leave it and then like come back the next day or a couple of days later and do that. But yeah, like it's a whole lot of organization when you're sort of like managing that, and you're sort of like managing what your sort of like your run schedule is, and anything else that you're doing. So you almost need that threat of a deadline with all of the things, I think, for it to work, because otherwise you're like, I'll get to it.
Yeah. No, I work well with a deadline. Like, very well with a deadline. Probably why I do what I do for a living, because I have deadlines set to me by the ATO, and so at the last minute I'm like, radio, let's smash all this crap out.
Yeah.
And then I get to the end and I say, I'll do more each month as I go. And admittedly I do, but then I still get to the end and go, yep, let's just get everything done this last week, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it is like helpful having those like really hard sort of deadlines, like those like non-negotiable things, because it's like, well, like this makes my decision for me, and like it's just and all the rest of it. So do you think you'll sort of I guess daycare is different than school, so that'll be continuous through the summer break?
Yes, it will be. It's so good, isn't it? And that's it. Like, and it will be really nice to just spend a day with Buster as well. Like consistently. Like, what did we do? No, last summer Wyatt wasn't in care, but this time, like at least we got those good sort of 6 or 7 weeks of holidays. I don't even know, but yeah, to have that one day a week where I can say, okay, what do you want to do today? And actually spend some time with him. Just going off and doing stuff, and like he's probably quite happy to come and ride his bike, and we head off and do things. So that'll be nice. But at least even if he's home, like I can leave him inside with the TV and I can go and run on my road and say, look, I'll be back in 45 minutes. He has his iPad so he can FaceTime me.
It is really nice when it's not sort of like chained to the house, like when they're just like that little bit older. I used to find it quite challenging to get through like the school holidays with because any time I wanted to do something, I had to take the two of them with me, and it was and even for things like just like going to the supermarket or whatever, it's this whole palaver of like getting them out of the house and doing all that sort of stuff. And now I'd be like, oh, going to the gym, see you in 2 hours, or whatever it is. And they're the same. They'll call me if they need anything, but for the most part they wouldn't even notice that I was gone.
No. And that's like Buster. Like, I will go out and he'll be sitting here watching Netflix, and I'll get back and he's still sitting there watching Netflix, and I go, oh, hi mate, how you going? Did you have any issues? What, mum? Like, it's like, okay.
Do I have some chicken nuggets now? Sure.
See, he loves sausages, and it's so good because I just make sure there's a supply of cold sausages in, like cooked sausages in the fridge, because he's quite happy to eat just a cold sausage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, rightio, good job. Like, I don't have to make him snacks.
I had one of the other mums from school say to me, like, oh, Arlo's so good, just eat anything. And I'm like, yep, complete polar opposite to the other one. Like, we were in Brisbane, another family was there. They're like, oh, we're going to go out to Japanese for dinner if you want to sort of join. And like, we're at the whim of the fussy child, so we'll be eating sushi for 3 days straight. So it does make, so now I really quite enjoy the summer holidays, because I don't have to be at home just because they are. I don't have to do all of the like getting ready for school stuff, and so in some ways it doesn't sort of disrupt like whatever my workflow or whatever is for the day, because like I could work from like 6 till 9 or whatever and get a whole heap done, and then like maybe go out after that for a run without having to, as it is like during the term, it's sort of like I might have a little bit of time when I get back from the gym, but then it's like not really enough time to do anything substantial, so I kind of just like get the kids ready and have a coffee and do whatever else, where and I do notice not having to break up that day into 8 to 9 getting them ready, and then 3 to 4 sort of like picking them up, and it just sort of allows for like a more just focused sort of time, although by the end of it I do get pretty sick of feeding them every 10 minutes or like they're sort of like random things. It's like, I would like something, but I don't know what it is. Maybe you have some ideas. And I'm like, no, I'm all out of ideas.
It's like, you're asking a person who will happily eat toast for every meal, huh? Like, you're asking the wrong person.
I think that, I'll definitely sort of just have to get them. At least with summer, it's usually a pretty good time of year for fruit. So, because it's sort of all of the summer fruits that they like, and we're just like, more watermelon.
Yeah.
So, I think it does in some ways make it easier, but then, you do have like 40 degrees to contend with from time to time, which is like we've had a weird sort of few weeks here where we had like 1 week where it was pretty much 30 degrees every day, and I was like, oh yes, I remember. And then the following week it was like cold again, and I was like, well, I don't know what's happening here, and then you sort of like struggle to sleep a little bit because the temperature is so different. But I think it is quite like a nice period of time to particularly when you're sort of like starting to train for something new. You have like that little bit more flexibility in the day, and you're not like tied to a routine like no one's business.
Yep. Like, I love routine, but I do actually like holidays when that routine can go out the window.
Yeah.
Especially living where we live. Like, I can, at least I know in summer, on the days when it's not terribly hot, when Wyatt goes down for his morning sleep, and like, for months he's had 2 hours of a morning, you put him down, he's asleep. I can leave Buster here and I can do like a 1K out and back from my house and know that at any point I am like 7 minutes. If I had to sprint, I could sprint a kilometre quicker than 7 minutes. But I know that I'm there and I can just, do what I need to do without feeling like I need to be in the house.
I remember one time I was like out on a run, and one of the mums from school texted me and said, "Oh, did you remember that it was like, I don't know, they had some kind of exhibition?" And completely forgot. Like, completely, I was about maybe 3 kilometres away and absolutely like sprinted to the school and made it in time. And that one of the other kids was like, "You look a little bit warm." And I'm like, "I am a little bit warm."
It's like, oh dear.
So yeah, it helps to have the ability to go a little bit faster than you planned on occasion that you need to.
Yeah. And that's like at times, where Joey said, "Oh, I need to leave home at X time." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, no, it's fine." And then I toddle off down the road and I have like a couple of points that I like to run to and then just turn around and toddle back. And sometimes I lose track of time. And then I'm like, "Oh, okay, we better hurry now." And I live at the top of a small rise, so that the coming home journey is always hard anyway. And I'm like, why? Why did I lose track of time?
Yeah, it happens really easily. Like, and I'm usually like pretty good about like going, like particularly if like sometimes I'll run before the gym and I'm like, okay, class starts at this time, and there's nothing that stresses me out more than being late. So, like I'm like, okay, well, the run was going to take this amount of time. I'll give myself, like a 15-minute buffer. And then sometimes I'll get towards the end, I'm like, shit. Yeah. Now I've got to really run. And it's also one of those things where even if you're going like a lot faster, you're still not saving that much time. Like even if going hell for leather, like maybe you get there a minute earlier than otherwise, and it's like, oh. But yeah, it's very, very easy to sort of just go, oh, like I'll just stop and do this, and then like I'll just have a little walk, and then and then before you know it, and it's definitely, I find that that's probably like one of the challenges of doing like a run like during a work day is it's just like all of that sort of stuff around it, like the getting dressed and then getting yourself out the door and then doing the run and sort of like coming back. Whereas that sort of time is either doesn't happen in the morning because you have like that hard deadline of when you've got to get back, or it's sort of like more stuff that's family time anyway. So when you get back and you're doing the post run, sort of like having a shower or whatever, like kids are getting ready for school, so you don't kind of notice it coming out of your day as much. But yeah, it's every now and then with it, I'm like, there's just so much procrastination going on here. And sometimes I actually use the treadmill for that reason, because it's sort of like it stops like some of that dilly-dallying, but I really would prefer not to use the treadmill if at all possible. Like I can't like I have to, if I'm on the treadmill, I have to be listening to a podcast or watching a show, because otherwise like it's one of those things where normally when I'm running I quite like listening to music, but I can't listen to music treadmill, because it's just like there's not enough stimulus, something's not happening, and it just irritates me. No end.
No, and I found that on Monday when I did my run. Mondays are generally a pretty good day in that Joey doesn't go, his sale doesn't start till 11, and it's a local one, so he generally leaves home about probably about 8:30. I don't know why he needs a good 2.5 hours of free time anyway. But I can get up, but I knew that I wanted to get it done early to get back into that habit of getting up early and doing it. And, you know, usually of a morning I have a teapot, so I'll make a pot of tea and I put the tea into a thermos so it doesn't go cold. And I'm like, no, not today. You've got to get out the door, woman. Like, boil that kettle, just have a tea bag and get out the door. And then I'm like, careful. I'm like, oh, I can't drink my tea. My tea's too hot. So I had to tip some of the tea out and add cold water. And it was really funny. It's just all those little things. And I'm like, you know, I need to practice this on a morning when it's not so crucial, because then, like, well, this morning he left really early. But, you know, on Friday, I want to try and run in the morning. So I'm like, you need to be out the door at a bit after 5 so that you can get it done. It's just getting into that habit of what you can, because you always think, oh, like, I'm a shocker. I go, I can fit in a load of washing, like, but it's not just 2 seconds to put the washing into the machine, is it? Like, you forget about all that crap. Like,
it's like, I'll put this in, and it's like, actually, I need to go find that singular t-shirt that the kid wears every day that's got to be really stinky by now, and then I got to, like, you know, like, I probably need to wash this and put it in the dryer really quickly, so I'll put it on the 15-minute cycle and I'll wait for that, and then I'll put that in the dryer so it's ready, like, for before school. It's like, it's like insane. One thing I did appreciate about being in Queensland is, like, the lack of daylight saving. So I met Lee for a run, and it's like, we'll meet at 5:30, and it is like, it's already been light since, like, basically 4:30 or something like that. And I'm like, man, this is so much easier than, you know, it's getting light here now, sort of early in the morning, but before, like, it, you know, basically at that time, like, having to run in the dark, less than inspiring. And like, it's like, I do notice the difference, like, with sort of getting up early. Like, I'll often brew coffee the night before, because it's like done, and then I can have my, like, coffee in the morning, and then, you know, and sort of, like, just all of those little things, like picking out all of the clothes, like getting my water bottles ready, you know, like knowing where my keys and headphones are, which probably at night, like, it probably only takes me about 10 minutes to do, but it probably saves me about 30 minutes in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. And I find that overnight, like, and that's what on Sunday night, like, I got out my clothes, and I don't know why, but I've got numerous pairs of joggers in my bedroom at one end of the house. So on Monday morning, I had to find a pair of joggers, and I'm like, oh shit, like, but I had everything else planned out apart from the incident with my tea being too hot. But yeah, it saves you so much time, and you think on Sunday night it takes you no time at all to put everything together. But like you said, if you have to do that in the morning, it's a good half an hour.
Around with a flashlight, trying not to wake people up, trying to find, like, why do I have, like, 2 left socks in my toe socks? There are no right toe socks. And, you know, and sort of going, you know, like, here's one shoe, but I'm not sure where the other shoe is. Maybe it's under the bed. And
and like, oh my God, where's my headlight? The batteries are flat. Like, Where on Sunday night, it's like bang, bang, bang.
Is insane. You know, like, I used to just have to charge, like, one thing, which is the watch. now I've got sort of like the watch and the boot battery and the head torch and the like headphones, and I'm like, this is an insane level of charging that's happening here. But every now and then, like last week, I've got down to the gym and I had like a run planned, like 8Ks, and I'd forgotten my headphones. And in my mind, it's like, oh, I could do this later. Like, this seems like but then I was like, no, you don't want to do it later, because, you know, you don't know, like, it was sort of like a little bit drizzly, but it wasn't like full raining. I was like, you don't know what the weather's going to be like later. And, you know, like, this is so much easier to get all of this done now. You know, you doing something later is a lie. You know it's a lie.
Yes.
And so every now and then, like, I do like find it quite, like, I always usually end up enjoying running without headphones. Like, for the most part, I like it because I listen to podcasts and it's like a little bit distracting. But every now and then, it's good to have that sort of, like, for somebody who, like, for loads of people who run without headphones all the time, but for somebody who never does, like, having that sort of like that mental discipline of just going, no, I'll just still do it anyway.
Yeah.
You know, and even though I dislike, I'm like, just like the sound of my breathing, sound like a freight train. You know, I've got to like listen to all of my neurotic thoughts for 45 minutes.
And that's it. That's why I like the headphones, because it tunes everything out. But then, like, days that I don't have them, or they're flat, or, you know, you can't find them in the half dark. And yeah, I'm like, I have to trot along out here and I have to listen to my brain, and I blow like a steam train. Like, yeah. And there's no, you know, it's really quiet where I run, which, like, people would love, but I like, I don't know, I like my headphones. I like that bit of noise. I like the podcast or an audio book, and just, yeah, tuning out.
Yeah, I think it also sort of like makes me feel like, particularly on early morning runs, like when it, like, running tends to be like such a sort of solo activity, but it makes me feel like I've got company. And so, you know, like, I really noticed, like, with Lee and I ended up running for the better part of 2 hours at about probably 2 minutes per kilometre slower than her pace. But that time just went so fast. Like, if I'd done that on my own, it would have felt like a really long run, but like, I didn't even really notice that. And that would have been the longest run that I've done in, you know, well, since before July, I would say. And if I was on my own, I'd get to like sort of like an hour 10 going, this is a really long one, isn't it? But yeah, so I like sort of having the feeling of having company, which is probably why, like, I really like listening to sort of like conversation type podcasts when I run, because then I feel like it's just like sort of like chatty, and, you know, and it makes it a little bit easier. Occasionally listen to music, but for the most part, it's just listen to somebody else talking, and not my own thoughts.
No, and
anyway.
Like, I find I get running along, and like, I go through, you know, mentally everything I have to do today, and bits and pieces. And then I get like halfway through a podcast and I'm like, oh, I haven't even listened to a word this person said.
Start back at the beginning.
But the thought of running without a podcast on and listening to my thoughts is like, no, that's not going to happen. But I can put the podcast on and run through my own thoughts while it's running, and I have no issue with that.
No. And yeah, like, sometimes I think it was like one of those days too, like, where like it just, I mean, you can like, I sort of like practice sort of like grounding myself and not doing that. But the natural thing is like I sort of like forecast all this stuff, like, oh, you know, like I'm going to get home and like one of the kids is going to have a drama about not wanting to go to school, and then I'm going to have to deal with that, and you know, like all of that sort of stuff, which might happen, but it equally also might not happen, and I'm constantly having to go like just let that go, stay in the moment, which is a lot easier to not have those sort of catastrophizing thoughts if I'm listening to someone else. So yeah, like it's a whole sort of mental game what you do, those, you know, those runs, even when they're like, even like I've found since sort of like coming back, I have a really different reaction to 8 kilometers than to 10 kilometers. It's just like it's not that different, but I look at 8 and I go, well, that's nice, and then I look at 10, I'm like, really?
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
So yeah, it's just all part of the mental gymnastics of alone.
yeah. And like some days I just wish that I lived in town and I could catch up with the running group and just run with them, because I know when I run with them, I don't listen to anything, and I don't run through that whole, I don't have that whole in my head stuff. Like I'm actually just enjoying their company and being where we are, which I don't when I run by myself. Like some people would probably kill to run where I run. It's beautiful, like as the sun's coming up. But I just like put my headphones on, put my head down and focus on what I've got to do. Yeah. And I just, some days I wish, oh God, it'd be so nice if I had a group to run with so that I could just not focus on anything, like just run.
Yeah, it does look, you see like people who are, you know, like in more sort of like city centres who have sort of like access to like more, you know, training groups and running groups, and you're always bound to find like somebody sort of like at your sort of level. Like I heard a rumour about a running group down here like a few years ago where they were like, if you didn't like keep up with them, they would drop you, and I'm like, that's not a running group.
My running group.
But yeah, it's I was listening to like an interview with Matt Fraser, and he was talking about like a similar thing but with gyms. Like he had his home gym, which was like basically like a little dungeon with like no windows, no air conditioning, could barely stand up, that kind of thing. And then at the other place he had his sort of like state-of-the-art gym, and regardless of which one he was at, he would be like, this is good, you know. So if he was at the shitty home gym, he would be like, this is good because like it's going to build all of this like resilience and mental toughness. And if he was at the really nice one, he'd be like, this is good because like I have everything I could possibly need. And just like making that sort of like mental adjustment, like if I'm doing a lot of my stuff on my own, I'm like, this is good because it's going to be so much easier when it comes to doing an event and you're surrounded by people, or you know, or sort of and similar, I have a similar mental stuff that I do with the heat. Like this is, you know, this is like altitude training I'm doing right now. Great. I'm going to appreciate this in April. Which is, for the most part, like you get pretty sort of acclimatized to the heat, so it doesn't phase me too much until I get to February. And February is like a real slog because it's so hot and so humid, and you've already sort of tolerated like a fair amount of it, and you're just like waiting for when it's actually going to start to sort of like the season's going to change. And it just seems to, it's always that sort of that last 10% that's like the hardest. And so then in February, I'm usually about ready to sort of like give up. but yeah, it is just it's one of those things with the heat where you just sort of have to like make peace with it. Like this is helping me. Like this is going to be, and on a few occasions I've got to see like how true that is, because the reality is like a lot of the times when I go and then do an event, like it might be Gold Coast in winter, but it's not that cold or that dry. Or it's like down in Melbourne in October, which is similar, like it's dry, but it's not necessarily that cool. So the one time I probably truly got to test it out is when we did like Canberra, where there's no humidity to speak of. And even though it wasn't that cold on that day, like it was probably 20 degrees or something like that, it was so much easier than anything I've done before, like in terms of like I was really like at the limit towards the end, but that's what you want.
Yeah.
You know? And I was like, wow, that is like a massive difference from like humidity to dry, like at that time of year, because I would have never like run even, I would say, like at home, like a 5K at that pace with like it's just it's really easy when like all you're really exposed to is extremely humid and slightly less humid to not realize like what impact it has when you go through all of that sort of summer training. What's the Simpson Desert like in the winter? Is that sort of,
look, you know, I haven't looked that far into it, but I'm tipping, you know, it won't be, the night will be cold.
Yeah.
But I'm tipping during the day. Like I'll start in the night. So a fair chunk of mine will be done in the dark, which is a bit disappointing. But I imagine during the day, like it's going to be in the 20s. Easily. So I'm just hoping that by running over here in the summer, you know, and the heat will continue here through March. That over April and May, I don't lose too much of that acclimatization. But anyway, I'll just slow down. Like it's just for fun. I'm not concerned.
It's really like I'm always telling people not to continue to like, oftentimes you'll go, oh, you know, like this is my easy pace, whether it's, you know, like 6-minute pace, 7-minute pace, 8-minute pace, whatever it is. But you don't want to take that, this is my easy pace, into summer, because then that's no longer your easy pace. You know, like just being really comfortable with just sort of slowing down to the conditions, because you can't do the same thing. It's just not gonna, you're just gonna end up like being exhausted. And particularly like it just depends. Like I've had some really nice like cool mornings here the last week or so, and then we had other mornings where it's just like making your way through like quicksand. It's just so, you know.
Those first few runs back, it's like when that hot weather starts to come, like you just feel like, oh, I thought I was going okay, but look at me. Like, but it's so true. You do just have to throw that, oh, you know, my easy pace is 7.5 minutes. Like you have to throw that out the window, because especially here it can be, you know, be 25, 28 degrees at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it hasn't been cold overnight. So, you know, and it'll be still and dry, and it's just like running. It's like in a sauna, like with not humidity, but it's yuck. So you just have to be prepared to, you know, walk a lot more. And I'm quite comfortable with that these days. I'm quite comfortable to go, you know what, I'm getting a bit puffed here. I'm a bit too puffed to be doing this at easy pace. So I'll just walk for a bit and pick another podcast and away we go again.
Yeah, and even I think that sometimes when I've just like mentally just not been super into a run, just like giving yourself the permission to go, like, I can have a walking break whenever I want to have a walking break. This doesn't matter, you know, like, because some days I'm like, you know, like it's enough that like I'm out here and you know, don't have to sort of like hold on to this idea of like what's a run versus what's not a run, or, you know, like anything like that. And ultimately it probably gives me a bit more consistency, because I'm like, oh, you know, like if I'm not feeling great, like I'll just like walk up the hills and, you know, like stuff like that. And sometimes it then ends up being better than I thought, but sometimes it's exactly how I thought. Okay.
And I think at the end of the day, like, I'm not an elite athlete. Don't have sponsorship riding on this running thing that I do. Like, it's something I do for fun. And if going out of a morning and gassing myself so that I have to come back to a bloody 16-month-old that wants my attention all day and I'm just tired and grumpy, like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, I need to use that. And like, I often have you in my head saying, you know, choose your hard. Like, I could go out there, gas myself and hate it and be grumpy all day, or go out there, realize, oh, you know, I'm a bit tired today, I'm going to walk. And then I walk home and, you know, I come home, I'm all right. I've been out in the sunshine and everyone's happy for the rest of the day. Like, yeah, it's not, I don't have anything riding on it. It's something I do for fun. And I look back and I think there was a period of time where I sort of lost that sense of fun about it. You know, I do it because I meet people, and, you know, I've never been to Birdsville. I'm going to go to Birdsville and run in the desert. You know, have a bit of fun.
Yeah, I'm mostly like, probably I'd be more likely on a run to be excited about having seen some pelicans than I would like necessarily like what the pace was, or like sometimes you get like the sea eagles as well. They're pretty cool, and then just like sit up there and not like sit on the rocks, and I'm not sort of like super shy, so you can get pretty close to them without them sort of flying off, you know, like that is much more likely to stay with me for the rest of the day, rather than like I like ran something 1 second faster than usual.
Yeah. It's like, woohoo, go you. But, and like, you know, I do my usual little track, but, you know, over the springtime there might be a certain little flower, it might even be a weed, but I've never seen it before, and I'm like, oh, look at that. Or just little things that you notice, that, and I might take a picture of it so then I can show Buster when I get back. And we've got a new bit in town where all these new houses are, and I like cruising past there and seeing, oh, gee, they got their cladding on this week. Like, you know, take a bit of time out, walk and sticky feet, you know, rather than, thinking, because I'm not fast anymore. I don't get enjoyment out of it. I just want to poke along. I just want to go and have some fun.
Yeah, I think that like the far more sustainable thing, and just I think it is just that sort of thing about like consistency will always win for intensity, you know. And so it's just like whatever you're going to do that you're going to enjoy doing is just going to last a lot longer, and you're going to have to work a lot less hard and to get it done. And, you know, like the amount of people I see persisting with things that they actually don't enjoy, and I'm like, maybe you just don't like running. Like, that's not a crime. Not going to take you to cardio jail.
Yeah, that's it. We're not going to arrest you because you don't like running. Like, go find something that you bloody like and do it. And, you know, and I have people say, "Oh, I wish I liked running." It's like, but running, you either like it or you don't. Like, you know, that you wished you liked running. That's not even a thing. Like,
yeah. And I mean, I think that there's that sort of that stage. Like I remember being a real beginner when it probably did take me like a couple of years to actually feel like an easy run was easy, you know. But there were always things that I liked about it, even though it felt hard. Because like in the beginning, at least, you're sort of like hitting those new milestones all the time.
Yeah.
So even if some things don't feel particularly easy, it's not that hard to be like, oh, today was the farthest I've ever run, or, you know, like, or other things that are going on. Oh, this was the first time that I managed to run for 30 minutes without stopping, or like whatever it is. But I think that there was always something that like I still liked about it, even when it didn't. And, you know, it's good for now because it certainly doesn't feel particularly easy. But you just get those little sort of like glimmers of like, oh, like every now and then I've probably, since I've had COVID, probably had 2 or 3 runs that felt like my old self, like it felt easy like that. And I was like, oh yeah, like it's still there.
Yeah.
And like that's enough for me to sort of like keep going. But yeah, I think it is one of those things where people are sort of tend to think of like put everything in like one sort of like cardio bucket, and it's like, well, like running's the most intense version of this sort of cardio, and therefore it is the best, and that is the thing that I should be doing. But, you know, like maybe you really love hiking and you really dislike running, and who cares? Like, or, you know, whatever it is, like rowing or paddleboarding or, you know, swimming, or you know, like any of those sorts of things. Like for me, I think that like when I had that sort of longish period off running, and I was like, I sort of got to that point towards the end. It's like, actually, if this doesn't happen, like I would be okay as long as I could be outside. You know, like that sort of, and whether that sort of was at the time doing, you know, like some, well, open water swimming would be overstated. Staying in a bay that was outside, you know, it wasn't like ocean swimming or anything like that. But for me, that sort of like felt similar to running, because it's just like get to be outside, you know, like see some animals, see the sky, you know, get that, like sunshine on your face, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And so yeah, it's sort of, I think that sometimes it's just a matter of like trying a few things out, you know, a bit like anything in running, a bit like sort of, you know, like people trying out like cross country or like trail or ultras or roads, or like, you know, learnt the hard way that I really don't like loops. You know, like do like those half marathons in like 5K or like 10K loops. I hate it.
No.
And I have not signed up for one with that sort of loop situation since, because it's like, no. Whereas it's like, I don't mind doing like a 5K like on the track with lots of loops, because it's sort of like a little bit, it's like a different environment, and, you know, but yeah, not those
big distances, and like, no.
And then having to go down the second time, and it's like the finish line is there, and like 10K would have been smart.
Yeah, like, here we go again. Let's go. Off we go. No, I don't cope with loops.
No. What else have you just going to get some work done for the rest of the day?
Yeah, a bit of work. Yeah, a bit of work. Yeah, just trying to organise because Friday I'm heading to Sydney. So basically there'll be no work done on Friday, which is good.
Yeah.
But I know I've got to cram a lot of work into today and tomorrow. And a client actually, they wanted to catch up tomorrow. They asked on Monday, and I'm like, and I could have quite easily, again, like going back to setting your boundaries, I could have quite easily said, yep, that'd be right. That's only a few hours. But yeah, I messaged them this morning and said, look, no, I can do next week and I can't do tomorrow. It's just too much.
Yeah, it is just, getting realistic too about how long things take.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, I always think, oh yeah, like I could do that, but it just like, it always like takes more time than like what I think it's going to take, particularly when you're like on Friday went down to like a meeting, and meeting's an hour, but it's going to take me half an hour to get there, half an hour to get back. Now that's sort of like 2 hours, and just, even with like that being like, they're like, oh, let's do it at 2, and I'm like, like we're going to need to do it at like 1:45 because I got like school stuff on, or like whatever else. And just, it was so funny. I went to get Riley early from school so we could go to Brisbane, and I've probably not actually ever picked her up early from the high school before, unless I was like, when she first started, there were a couple of times I had to pick her up from sick bay because she'd fainted. And so I rocked up, like just as I would do at the primary school. I just said, oh, I'm here to pick up Riley Dowling early. And they're like, did you call ahead? I'm like, no, I'm standing here. And they're like, oh, she doesn't have authority to leave the classroom. And I'm like, I'm not busting her out of juvie here. Like, they're like, we like people to call ahead if they can, because then she might have like changed classrooms. And I'm like, okay, but I'm sure that you guys keep track of that.
That's like, I'm sure I'd be a bit concerned if I rocked up here and you didn't actually know which classroom my child is in. Like,
and meanwhile, Arlo's standing there, and they're starting there next year, and and like a couple of these year 12 boys like walk past, and Arlo's just looking at the great big giants that they are, and I'm like, oh man, it could be interesting. And so yeah, like it's just, I was like, oh, okay, like we're at a different level of bureaucracy here than at the primary school. So yeah, but that's all be fun and games. Next year. Exciting.
Joy.
Anyway, I'll let you get back to your day. I'm going to catch up on strength today.
Nah, I'll do it tomorrow. I figure I can do that on Sunday night. Might be a nice thing to do after coming home.
Yeah.
I'm taking the easy way, and I'm flying because I just couldn't. I don't have the brain capacity to drive to Sydney by myself.
No.
At the moment. So I'm just going to fly, and I can come back on Sunday afternoon, and
Yeah, I'm going down on, like, it's around, I think, the 9th of December, going to the yoga thing with Kirsten, and I just decided to like just come back on like Monday.
Yeah.
And like I'm taking the Friday and the Monday off work, just to, like, far too many times I try to like jam everything in and not take the time off work, but I'm like, just take the time off work, it'll be easier. And I mean, and Josh gets to enjoy the school drop off. Well,
I was like, oh, you know, like if you can't be bothered, just keep them home. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, like that's on the 12th and their last day is on the 16th. I mean, they're not doing anything at school at that point. Like, even as it is, like every Friday, like Arlo has sport and then they have free time afterwards. So it's like they're not doing much. Like,
yeah. Thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. As always, you can pretty much find out everything I do at opmove.com. And if you'd like to support the podcast, you can do that at patreon.com/opmove. And as always, Run Club has a free trial, so you can always sign up to check that out at any time. Next time, I have recorded an episode with Joe, and we'll be talking about all things strength training, so you can check that out. And got any questions at all, just send me a message on any of the social media places, or you can email me at zoe@opmove.com, and that's ZOEY. And I will catch you next time.